like to call the Lane County Board of Commissioners regular meeting back into session for Tuesday, March 20th, 2018. And our first item of business in the afternoon is item 11A, which is public hearing in order 1803-2003 in the matter of surrender of a portion of Cleveland Street, County Road number 1956 to the City of Cottage Grove. We have Jay Baume here, our county surveyor, and I'll let you introduce the subject here before we open the public hearing.
Thank you, Chair Bozovich. We're here today in the matter of surrendering jurisdiction of Cleveland Street to the City of Cottage Grove. ORS Chapter 373 requires that a public hearing be held to allow testimony be entered into the public record. The City of Cottage Grove, by its resolution number 1949, has formally requested that jurisdiction of Cleveland Street be transferred to the City of Cottage Grove. ORS Chapter 373 provides for the transfer over county roads within a city when it is considered necessary, expedient, or in the best interest of the county to do so. The board may remember that Lane County recently sold a Lane County-owned parcel to the City of Cottage Grove in January of this year, pursuant to order number 1801-3006. This jurisdictional transfer is a portion of the consideration for that sale that was agreed upon by Lane County and Cottage Grove. Cleveland Street is located in South Cottage Grove, is approximately 1/4 mile in length, and is located entirely within the city limits of Cottage Grove. ORS Chapter 373 requires that legal notice of the public hearing be posted or published. Legal notice was posted as witnessed by the affidavit of posting marked as Exhibit D attached to this order. Lane County staff recommends that the board approve this jurisdictional transfer to Cottage Grove. Approving the order will relieve Lane County road maintenance of future maintenance obligations for the road. At this time, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Any questions for staff before I open the public hearing? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing on this order. And I have one person signed up to speak so far, so if you'll step up to the podium, Mary Seals, if you'll state your name and your address for the record, and then you can start your testimony.
My name is Mary Seals. I live at 7808 South 6th. It's on the corner of South 6th and Cleveland Street. I own 5 houses on Cleveland Street, including my home, and 2 big fields are surrounding it. Also, one more house on the south side of Cleveland and a lot where I'm putting a mobile home on. This street became aware, I guess, to the county about 3 to 4 years ago. My husband and I have had rental houses on our property for many years. And the county decided that it was a county road, so they started mowing the grass in front of Woodard's property, but we'd been keeping up everything. We'd paid to have the gas line put down the street and so forth over the years. I have no objection to it being part of the city. I have just recently annexed my home and some of my property into Cottage Grove. And so that's my background. And again, I have no objection to it being part of the city.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wants to testify at the public hearing on the Cleveland Street surrender to Cottage Grove? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and open this up to the board for discussion and a possible motion. Commissioner Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move the adoption of board order number 18-03-20-03 in the matter of surrendering a portion of Cleveland Street, County Road number 1956, to the City of Cottage Grove.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Williams, seconded by Commissioner Lyken. Discussion to the motion. Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
That moves us on to item 11B, which is the fourth reading and deliberations on ordinance number PA 1349 in the matter of amending the rural comprehensive plan to redesignate land from forest land to agricultural land and to rezone land from impacted forest land F2 to exclusive farm use E40 and adopting savings and severability clauses, file 509 PA 1605160. And we have Amber Bell here.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is a third reading and deliberations.
Fourth reading.
Excuse me, a fourth reading and deliberations for a privately initiated plan amendment and zone change application for tax lot 300 map 18050640. The applicant proposes to redesignate the property from forest to agricultural and then to zone the property, to change the zoning from impacted forest land F2 to exclusive farm use E40. The board conducted a third reading and public hearing on January 23rd. At that time, the hearing was closed, and the board held the record open through January 30th, 4 p.m. for any additional information submitted by any parties, and then also through February 6th for rebuttal and through February 13th for the applicant's final written argument. That information and testimony has been attached to the board memorandum as attachment 2. In general, the comments raise concerns about potential impacts, such as traffic impacts, that would be associated with future development proposals. For example, one opponent submitted a traffic study that evaluated a traffic impact analysis that was completed for a previous land use application for an adjacent property immediately to the west. That traffic impact analysis itself is not in the record, and the letter does not assert that the proposed plan amendment would significantly affect a transportation facility. That is the test for whether or not a post-acknowledgement plan amendment is consistent with statewide planning goal 12. Lane County Transportation Planning found that the proposal does not involve any significant effect to a transportation facility, and for those reasons it appears that the application does comply with goal 12, and staff have slightly revised the findings to statewide planning goal 12 to address these comments. Additionally, the applicant requests that their final written argument, or in their final written argument, that testimony that's immaterial to application criteria should be stricken from the record in the memorandum and also the revised findings of fact. Staff suggests that the appropriate course of action would be not for the board to strike those materials from the record, but to not consider materials that are not germane to the approval criteria. After reviewing the materials submitted during the open record period and making slight revisions to the findings of fact, it appears that the approval criteria have been satisfied, and therefore staff recommend that the board move the fourth reading and approve the application and enact ordinance PA 1349. That concludes staff's presentation. Myself and Ann Davies with LCOG, who's provided technical review of the application, are available to answer questions. Thank you.
Questions for staff? Commissioner Sorensen.
So, Ms. Davies, what is your role in all this?
What is my role?
And thanks for your technical review.
Because staff is lacking a few members of their staff, they've contracted with LCOG, so I'm basically working as a planner for them. So I helped draft the findings and reviewed the application and kind of took it through the process from the planning.
Okay. And Ms. Bell, you mentioned that some modification was made in the approval documents that are submitted. What were the changes?
So we made a couple revisions to the proposed findings of fact that are Exhibit C to the ordinance. Those are the mention that the applicant has requested that the comments not germane to the approval criteria be stricken from the record, and so
You didn't do that, right? You did not approve, in the proposal, you did not approve that striking from the record
Correct.
thing?
Yes.
Okay.
All of the comments that were received after the public hearing and through the end of the open record period are included in the attachment to the board packet.
And on that narrow point about striking comments that are not germane to the approval criteria, I can see some merit in that idea, but isn't that against Oregon land use law? to strike somebody's testimony?
It's somewhat within your discretion. I mean, if it's irrelevant or you could go through and redact, but it's not really practical for a body in your circumstance to do something like that.
So it's better to accept the testimony and then not consider items that are outside of what is germane to.
Right. So there are two paragraphs at the very beginning of the findings that basically set out that they requested that and that you are denying it.
Okay. Thank you.
And then the other place is the goal 12, because there was some commentary of the traffic impact study. And so the findings address that impact study and say why it doesn't change the analysis.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? I have one question, and I kind of asked you this one in advance, so you'd be prepared to answer it. You did change the findings slightly. Is there any need to go to a fifth reading because of the change in the findings? I think we had legal look into that and kind of determined that the actual decision language didn't change. It just the attached findings wouldn't generate the need for another reading. So am I accurate in stating that?
That's our understanding, that a fifth reading would not be required, and staff has consulted with county council along that matter.
Yeah, and I have to concur with Commissioner Sorensen, particularly in verbal testimony. People quite often give us testimony that has no applicability to the criteria for decision we're making, and we don't strike their verbal testimony from the record. We just have to know from your education to us and our knowledge of the decision that's before us what criteria are applicable and make our decisions based on that, or it's probably going to get remanded from LUBA or someplace else if we make a decision that includes using testimony or materials that are not addressing the criteria. So that's really, I don't think there's a need to strike materials from the record, because people can submit whatever they want, including the applicant. I've seen applicants actually include things in their submittals that really doesn't address criteria that are part of the decision. So I don't want to start that particular where we are striking materials from the record, because I don't think that's for us to do. What's for us to do is to decide what actually addresses the criteria and make our decision based on materials submitted that address the criteria. Commissioner Solomon.
I had another, I think it's a pretty quick question. In one of the attachments, I guess it was the page 6 of 6 on the memo that was dated, let's see. The agenda cover memo back on memorandum date November 20, first reading date December 5. You at the end of that memo, you attached several documents, and one of them was the agricultural working paper addendum, National Wetlands Inventory Map, and the LCPA motion document. I just wanted to quickly ask, is the LCPC motion document, that's just the Lane County Planning Commission motion to approve it, right?
That is correct.
Okay, and then what about the other two, the National Wetlands Inventory Map and the Agricultural Working Paper Addendum? What are those documents?
The National Wetlands Inventory Map shows the location of wetlands on the property. The Agricultural Working Paper Addendum is essentially an addendum to the Rural Comprehensive Plan Amendment that provides information interpretations to the policies in the Rural Comprehensive Plan for agricultural lands.
And what are the dates of those? I mean, my concern is I think they're old, but I don't know.
I would have to take a look at the file. I don't know right off the top of my head.
Maybe the way, this isn't really entirely germane, excuse the term. It's not entirely germane to the outcome of this, but would you be able to email the board just telling us the dates of the National Wetlands Inventory Map and the Agricultural Working Paper, so that A, you would know, and B, we would know, because my concern is that, particularly on the wetlands, that in the recent years, where you've had these big horrific floods in the south and other places, there's been commentary that these wetlands maps are really out of date and were put together at a time when the knowledge about the climate of any particular area was assumed but not really known with current data. And I think you're seeing more and more people wanting to know the accuracy of those wetland maps and flood maps. So would you be able to send us an email on that?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, thank you so much.
And just for commentary's sake, I believe the National Wetlands Inventory maps we're talking about are the ones that were adopted as part of our overall rural comprehensive plan and are part of our Goal 5 resource plan, which date back to prior to 1984, I think, when we adopted the rural comprehensive plan. We haven't adopted anything new since then without having to go through a full Goal 5 resource analysis. So just so you know, they're at least that old. So any other questions for staff on the proposal? Then I would be looking for a motion on the ordinance. Commissioner Lycan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'd like to move approval of ordinance number PA 1349. It's in the matter of amending the rural comprehensive plan to redesignate land from forest land to agricultural land, to rezone land from impacted forest land F2 to exclusive farm use E40, and adopting savings and severability clauses.
Second.
Been moved by Commissioner Lycan, seconded by Commissioner Williams to approve ordinance PA 1349. And any discussion to the motion? Commissioner Lycan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So when I was going through the last bit of material, I guess my question would be, if this ends up being appealed, which wouldn't surprise me in the bit. So are you confident that the information and the findings that are in here would pass muster, I guess, is what I'm asking more than anything else? Because I'm just taking a look at this and thinking, okay, so we've worked this pretty good, and we've asked you to go back and then come back again, and are you feeling pretty confident, I guess, is the question I have.
As 95% as we can be.
Okay.
I mean, you never know what
I agree.
LUBA's going to do with the findings.
Yeah, I agree. But from a staff perspective, and just the findings that were put into this, because like I said, it went back to you and we asked you to work on it, and then coming back for. So overall, you're feeling, though, overall pretty confident of where we are.
Yeah, I actually did spend quite a bit of time on the Goal 5 analysis because that was initially the main issue that they brought up, the big game. And so when I was doing that Goal 5 analysis, I didn't just copy the applicant's findings that they presented in their application because I didn't think that they were adequate. So we did delve in pretty deep on that Goal 5 analysis.
That's where I was getting at.
Yeah.
And because that was the pretty significant issue when we went back for original readings on this.
And the just to state, the applicant's position was pretty much that when you're going from this resource designation to this other resource designation, it's kind of a wash. I didn't agree that was the analysis that you guys needed to be taking. So it's more of like, okay, what uses are there going to be allowed that weren't allowed? It doesn't matter if it's a wash or not. It's just, what are you adding? We don't care what you're subtracting. So that's kind of how I drafted up the findings, is like looking at those uses that are going to be allowed that weren't allowed, which are probably the reasons why the zone change is occurring.
Very good. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So I have one quick question before we go to a vote here, just so it's clear. This action just changes the zoning from forest designation to farm and agricultural designation. Does it actually grant the winery use?
No, it doesn't authorize any specific development proposals at this time. However, there are certain winery provisions in the exclusive farm use zone that may be allowed upon rezoning of the property.
Right. But they will have to actually go through a separate application process for the use as a winery?
If the applicant were proposing certain uses, such as agritourism events, that would require a director-level application, land use application.
And there'd be notification to the neighbors?
And that would include notification to the neighbors, correct?
I just want to make that clear that this decision does not necessarily establish a winery, which I think is some of the concern of the neighbors, is merely a change in zoning designation, and one that's got specific criteria attached to it, and the applicants, shown, at least to me, that they've met that criteria and under staff's recommendation. So I just want to, for the neighbors that are concerned, there'll be another shot.
If I may clarify, there are certain winery allowances that wouldn't require notice. So
Yeah, you can grow grapes without notice. That's a permitted use by right under that. In fact, you can do that on F2 land without notice. It's the actual, a tasting room and holding events that starts getting you into the other permits.
The events would require director review. Yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion of the motion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. This is an ordinance. Will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Sorensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Lycan?
Aye.
Commissioner Williams?
Aye.
Commissioner Farr?
Aye.
Commissioner Bozevich?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Wow, tongue-tied this afternoon. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your assistance with our staff. So that wraps up our regular business today. Is there any other business for the board? If not, we'll go to review of assignments. So review of assignments, Mr. Moker.
I don't have any.
No assignments today.
Didn't hear any, no.
Yeah. And we already took care of executive session. If there is no other business for the board, I will adjourn us and hope to see all of you at 4 o'clock for Casey's reception. We are adjourned.